Good news.
And that's all for Fox 32 News at noon.
News continues on Chicago Live on Fox Local. Hope to see you back here for the news at 4.
Next stop, share.
We'll also be talking to an FBI expert about the Nancy Guthrie case. New surveillance images were just released by the FBI today. But first, we want to take you out to the White House, where Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt is giving her daily briefing.
In April. Go ahead.
Hey, Caroline. So some Republican lawmakers from Nebraska have said they're worried that the Argentinian beef executive order will sideline some American ranchers. How will the Trump administration make sure prices go down for consumers without harming those ranchers?
Of course. Well, both things can happen at the same time. That's the president's belief. He wants to see prices come down. In fact, I just overheard him on the phone with Secretary Rollins. They were talking about something different, but he's always saying we got to make sure that prices continue to come down. As you know, Secretary Rollins successfully did that with respect to egg prices. Beef prices are coming down slightly, and the president wants to see that continue. He believes that a minor import to the country with cattle might be a short-term solution with respect to bringing down prices, but of course protecting our American cattle and rancher industry is a priority for the president, and he's in touch with those stakeholders. We've had them here at the White House a few times in recent months to discuss this issue directly. John.
Thanks a lot, Caroline. Yesterday, the president on social media threatened to block the new Gordie Howe Bridge, which would connect Detroit to Canada. This is a bridge that was fully paid for by Canada. It used American labor to construct it. It used American steel to construct that bridge. The president in 2017 was actually in favor of this bridge, part of a joint statement that he put out when he met with the Canadian Prime Minister. Why has the president changed his mind as it relates to this bridge?
I think the president was very clear and direct in his truth, John, but just to reiterate, the fact that Canada will control what crosses the Gordie Howe Bridge and owns the land on both sides is unacceptable to the president. It's also unacceptable that more of this bridge isn't being built with more American-made materials, even more so than what President Barack Obama committed to with the Canadians at the time, at the start of the project. He also believes that the U.S. should own at least half of the bridge, have shared authority over what passes across it, and participate in the economic benefits generated by its use. This is just another example of President Trump putting America's interests first, and so he made that very clear in his call with Prime Minister Carney earlier today. Phil.
Thank you, Caroline.
Sure.
DHS Secretary Kristi Noem just posted a photo of herself signing the last contract to build a border wall between Laredo, Del Rio, and Big Bend, Texas, among reports that construction had stalled. Is the president satisfied with the pace of construction?
The president wants to make sure that the full border wall is built as quickly as possible, of course. I know this is a priority for him dating back to 2016, and so absolutely he wants to ensure that the border wall is built under budget and ahead of schedule is how President Trump likes to view building projects, and that includes the border wall.
Satisfied with the pace of construction thus far?
I think the president is never satisfied. He always wants to ensure that things are moving along as quickly as possible, but I know Secretary Noem is on it, and she's doing a great job.
Thank you, Caroline.
You're welcome. Sure, go ahead.
Thank you.
Charlie.
On the Nancy Guthrie case, is the president satisfied with the federal and local investigation so far? And has there been any more contact from the White House or the president with the family?
I don't think anybody will be satisfied until this case is brought to a close and until Nancy Guthrie is returned home safely with her loved ones.
What about the White House contacts? Has the president contacted the family since?
Not since that initial phone call. Sure. Tamara.
Thank you. The National Governors Association is removing a meeting with President Trump from his agenda because only Republicans were invited. Is the White House reconsidering inviting Democrats, or do you think Republicans are still going to show up? Where does that stand now?
No, look, I just spoke with the president about this. It is a dinner at the White House. It's the people's house. It's also the president's home, and so he can invite whomever he wants to dinners and events here at the White House. I believe Governor Moore was invited last year, and he did not show up to the dinner last year. Nobody reported on it. But again, the president has the discretion to invite whomever he wants to the White House, and he welcomes all those who received an invitation to come. And if they don't want to, that's their loss.
And on Ghislaine Maxwell, is the president going to rule out a pardon for her? In her testimony, deposition yesterday, her legal team seemed to be making a case again for a pardon from the president.
Again, this is not something I've discussed with the president recently because, frankly, it's not a priority. He's focused on many of the issues that the American people are dealing with and providing solutions to those issues. So I haven't spoken with him recently. Last time we did speak about it, he said it's not something he's considering or thinking about. Go ahead, Bloomberg.
Thanks, Caroline. Secretary Lutnick today was testifying on the Hill, and he said that he had visited Epstein's Island in 2012 with his wife and children, and that's after he said that he had cut ties with Epstein. And Justice Department documents show that he was in contact with Epstein through 2018 over messages. So does the White House stand behind Secretary Lutnick right now, or given what he has said today, has shifted in how the White House is viewing Secretary Lutnick's performance?
No, Secretary Lutnick remains a very important member of President Trump's team, and the president fully supports the secretary. I will just point out that there are a lot of wins in the news this week that people in this room have not asked about because you continue to ask questions about the same subject, so let me point them out for you. Again, on Friday, the Dow shattered 50,000 for the first time ever. This week, the American Society of Plastic Surgeons came out in opposition to gender mutilation surgeries for children. They are the first major medical group to do so. A federal appeals court today, nobody asked about that, just upheld the Trump administration's policy of detaining illegal aliens, validating the strong measures that have driven illegal crossings to historic lows, and sent a crystal clear message that under President Trump, if you enter the country illegally, you will be detained and removed. The murder rate, again, not a single question about this, has plunged to a 125-year low as crime falls across the board thanks to President Trump's crime crackdown. We also saw this week national median rents have fallen to a 4-year low following 6 consecutive monthly declines, and mortgage affordability has surged to a 4-year high. Home ownership is the core foundation principle of the American dream, and I will repeat that mortgage affordability this week surged to a 4-year high, but not a single of mention of that in this briefing room today. And again, this came.
That was Caroline Leavitt from the White House covering a variety of topics. She did mention that she hasn't spoken recently with President Trump about potential clemency for Ghislaine Maxwell. She is Jeffrey Epstein's former girlfriend and confidant. Caroline Leavitt saying that that is not a priority for the president right now. She also said that President Trump in the last week did speak with the Guthrie family about Nancy Guthrie's disappearance, hasn't had a phone call with them since, but says that she doesn't think anyone will be satisfied in this case until Nancy Guthrie is brought home. We'll have much more on that later this afternoon. Switching gears now, Fifth Ward Alderman Desmond Yancey is joining us to talk about something that happened over the weekend. At least 30 vehicles in Hyde Park, the windows were smashed. It sounds like items were not stolen, but that this was just someone causing damage. Let's bring in Alderman Yancey now. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
So tell me a little bit about just what you know about this rash of break-ins. It doesn't sound like items were stolen, but it was just vandalism.
Yeah, that's the word I got from the 2nd District Commander. It seems as though that about 30 cars were vandalized in the wee hours of the morning. It doesn't seem as though much was taken, but it seems like more than a nuisance for the people who live in the community. It's just a huge did I lose you?
We did. We broke up just a little bit. You were saying it's a huge nuisance for the community, and we understand too that some neighbors are starting to call for some more surveillance. Tell me a little bit about what you've heard from your constituents.
Yeah, there had been similar crimes that had been committed earlier or late last year, and the police department worked really diligently to provide extra patrols between 1 and 5 in the morning to do their part to make those crimes, make less opportunity for those crimes. And it seems that what they had been doing had been working. But it was just this one moment where, again, 30 cars were vandalized in what appears to be a short period of time. So police are now looking at surveillance video. They're asking residents if you've got Ring cameras or anything, or if you've seen something, please reach out to the second district so that they can take that information and do their best to hold those folks accountable.
Yeah, it happened in the 5500 block of South Shore Drive and the 1700 block of East 56. So anyone with Ring doorbell camera on those streets should certainly turn it in. Alderman Yancey, do you know any suspects that police are looking at? Or do we know, was it one person or was it a group of people?
It's unclear at this point, at least from what they've shared with me for now. They're looking at surveillance camera video and have canvassed the community after they were notified of the events. So they tend to canvass in the mornings and then after people come home from work so that they can, again, get help from the community in solving this crime.
All right. Thank you so much. Anything else going on in your ward that you want to touch on?
We've got a lot of great things happening. This Friday, we're hosting our 3rd annual Senior Valentine's Day Luncheon at Don Nash Park on 71st Street.
Cute.
It's just a great opportunity to spend time with some families in our community and give them an opportunity to, be honored for their service.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being with us. We really appreciate your time. Again, if you live in that area, 5500 block of South Shore Drive and 1700 block of East 56th Street. Police asking you to look at your Ring doorbell surveillance cameras. This happened around 4 a.m. Over the weekend on Saturday morning. Any information that might be of assistance to police would be appreciated. We're going to take a quick break and we will be right back. Welcome back to Chicago Live. It is almost 1:14 p.m. This next topic is something that almost all of us can relate to no matter where you live, but soaring housing costs and rental prices. We want to bring in Ryan Metcalf, the VP of Public Affairs at Flex, to talk about something interesting. Not paying your rent now, but paying it later when you can. First, give us a little bit of background, Ryan, about the company, and thanks for being with us.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. Flex, which is getflex.com, helps renters smooth their cash flow. And so for many renters, we have 42 million in this country, Many of them are paid weekly, bi-weekly, or have variable income, yet most of their recurring non-discretionary expenses like rent, utilities, insurance, their car payments are all due at the beginning of the month. And so what we found is many renters are trying to figure out how they can pay those bills and yet wait until they get their income, even if they have the amount of income for the month. And what we found is more than 10 million renters are paying late rent fees a year, totaling more than $2 billion. And the average family is paying more than $1,000 a year in annual interest and fees. And so we thought that there was a better way to help people manage everyday life expenses.
So, Ryan, tell us a little bit how it works. You know, what's the monthly cost? I understand there is a subscription fee to participate in Flex, but then give us an example. Let's say your rent is $1,500 a month. What do you pay month one of signing up for the service? And then how do you pay off the rest?
Yeah, of course. So for an average $1,500 a month, Flex will extend you a line of credit for up to half of your rent, depending on your credit worthiness. And that typically will cost you up to $30 on average to split your rent into two payments. The way it works is you sign up for Flex, you pay Flex up to half of your rent on the first, Flex pays your landlord in full, and then you repay Flex the other remaining part any other day in the month. And you can choose that due date and you can move it if you'd like to with no penalty. And you just have to repay Flex in full by the end of the month in order to use it again the following month.
And there are some fees associated. Tell us a little bit about that. And do those outweigh, though, later on? You mentioned those costs at the end of the year of late fees. Have you found that the percentage that you charge for the service actually ends up being less or more than people's late fees?
Yeah, I mean, the average cost is $30 a month, and the average late rent fee is about $85, though many of our customers, we see late rent fees up to $250, and some of them accrue daily after the initial fee. So certainly if you're comparing a $30 fee to split your rent to avoid a penalty, that's certainly, I think, a good trade-off. The other is whether you're having to, forego certain things. So many of our users let us know that they, didn't have to choose between groceries or childcare or, medical care, that we were able to help them that month. And our average customer only uses Flex around 3 or 4 times a year. So it's fairly episodic in use. And it tends to be that either people are trying to use Flex more as a bridge, not so much a crutch, and that we help them absorb financial shocks without actually, turning into a debt spiral and getting in a worse position than they started.
Yeah, you make a good point when you bring up medical expenses. So this, in theory, would be great for someone who has maybe come onto hard times or had an unexpected medical event. They've got bills stacking up and they can turn to this in the temporary to get by.
Yeah, I think in a perfect world, people would have, income and expenses were aligned and everybody had enough cash to absorb life's, financial shocks, the things that happen that are unexpected, like a broken car or, a drop in income. But we operate in the world that we live in, which is everything is not perfect. And, income is variable and expenses are disjointed. And there are a host of fees and penalties. And there are other financial products that really make their profit off of compounding interest, late fees, accruals. And so we thought, how do we just do away with all of the traps that traditionally get people into worse positions, give them an upfront cost, give them the ability to flex their rent, and focus on their discretionary, important everyday expenses. And we found that we've estimated that we've saved our customers, we've about $1.5 million on our platform every month. And we've been around since 2019, and we've helped them save over $500 million in late fees to date.
Talk a little bit about where did this service first launch? Was it in a specific city and has it expanded to across the country? And how many users do you have right now?
Yeah, Flex is the largest rent payment platform in the country. We have about 1.5 million customers on our platform every month. We've had about 2.7 million to date. We're available in all 50 states nationwide. And properties typically integrate Flex So when you go to pay your rent online, you can select Flex as a payment option, which is not an option they've had before. Up until now, renters really have had one option to pay their rent, and that's whatever the landlord has provided them. And so we came in and try to offer them a lower cost and give them another, tool to help manage their expenses. We also report those on-time rent payments to TransUnion to help them build credit. We actually just finished a study this week that shows our users that have less than a 580 credit score who use Flex consistently over 3 or 6 months do see an increase in improvement in their credit score over time.
Okay, interesting. Ryan, what have you heard from people who have used this service? Any stories that make you all at Flex continue to want to offer this?
Yeah, I mean, the stories are the thing that keep me up at night. So whenever I hear, genuine criticism or concern about people using Flex, I think about the people who say that they would have been evicted if it had not been for having Flex, or they wouldn't have been able to feed their child, or had not been, or we saved them, hundreds of dollars over the year. And so I tend to think of people as like being on the edge of financial precarity, and we're trying to help them make sure that they don't tip over the edge. But we did launch a 501c3 nonprofit 2 years ago called Flex for Good that provides direct rental assistance. So when we do see customers in which flexible rent is not able to ultimately help them, we have provided, I think, over $500,000 in direct rental assistance to help prevent avoidable evictions.
Oh, wonderful. Tell us more about that nonprofit.
Yeah, I mean, we're scaling it, but one of the promising things about having the largest rent payment network in the country is that we can see when people are making on-time payments and something happens in their financial situation, and then all of a sudden they're not, and they fall behind. We can see that in real time. And so what we do is we proactively reach out to the property and provide that direct rental assistance. And we can do that in less than 48 hours compared to some of the other models that are out there that take weeks. And so we think our platform is really focused on getting people into housing by lowering the barrier of entry, keeping people financially stable by helping them split their rent and avoid a lot of these fees and penalties, help them build their credit history. And then ultimately we have this safety net on the end that can keep people housed if it looks like their situation needs something more than what debt can solve. We have the direct rental assistance piece.
Ryan, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate your time. We will have much more after this quick break, but we are going to be back in just 2 minutes here. Welcome back to Chicago Live. I'm Casey Cronus in for Anita this afternoon. We've got much more coming up throughout the next couple of hours, but we want to take you out to a live picture of Nancy Guthrie's home in Arizona. Things have developed this afternoon with the FBI releasing new surveillance images of what they're calling a subject. They're not calling this person a person of interest or even a suspect, but a subject. Now, we have been waiting for over a week to find out more if there are any surveillance images of someone who they are looking into or investigating. We did finally get some of those images today, and it shows a masked individual at her doorstep. It's dark out. This person then, they released a video as well, so you can see that this person then takes some sort of plant or brush from the side of her home and kind of covers the Nest camera with it. The FBI said that these images were inaccessible prior to today. The FBI, of course, ramping up their involvement in this case, as it has now been over a week since Savannah Guthrie, Today Show host's 84-year-old mother, went missing from her home. There are a lot of questions about this case, including who she was last with. It's believed that she was last with her daughter Annie and Annie's husband Tommaso Cioni, but a lot of questions swirling. Of course, last week a couple of ransom notes were sent to several news outlets. It's still unclear if those ransom notes were legitimate. Savannah Guthrie releasing another video yesterday pleading with the public for help if anyone has any information. Now, you can see there is a sheriff's vehicle outside of her home here, but not a lot of action that we can see just yet. Unclear if the FBI will have any more developments for us today, but they did release some surveillance images. And later today, we will be speaking with Phil Andrew. He is a former FBI leading hostage negotiator and kidnapping expert. We're going to get his take on this coming up in just a little bit. And now we want to take you to Chuck Schumer, who is now speaking, and we'll be right back with you.
Senator Markey, move your conversation somewhere else. At least he'll, he's on our side. Okay. We must keep pushing for common sense reforms. They are ending the roving patrols and secret police, a code of conduct. Our proposal simply holds ICE agents. It's such a simple thing. It's hard to believe they're resisting. We simply hold ICE agents to the same standards Americans expect from their local police department from coast to coast. To be clear, these guardrails on ICE must apply across the board, including funding for Republicans' so-called Big Beautiful Bill. Our reforms must apply to all ICE operations. It would be ridiculous to say some ICE agents have to meet some standards but others don't because of where the funding came from, and we never even know where the funding would come from. Democrats proudly support law enforcement, but what ICE is doing isn't law and order, it's chaos, plain and simple. Today, the heads of ICE, Border Patrol, and other enforcement agencies testified in the House for the first time since the killing of Alex Preddy and Renee Good. However, today, the head of ICE refused to answer if Good and Preddy deserved to die. Refused to answer. And when asked if he would commit to unmasking ICE agents so they can be identified, he had a simple answer: no. Most Americans would be aghast that we should have secret police, unidentified police, roaming through our neighborhoods. He also admitted that even after their body camera announcement, almost 80% of agents still aren't wearing cameras. That's pathetic. Today's testimony made one thing very clear. For all the administration's talk of lowering the temperature, little meaningful change has happened throughout the country. Thousands of agents are still roaming the streets. People are still being assaulted by federal law enforcement. It's only a matter of time before someone else gets seriously hurt or worse. The only real solution is common sense bipartisan resolution. Senate Democrats are ready. We're still waiting on Republicans to deliver real results. Senator Cortez Masto.
Thank you, Senator Schumer. It's really clear. You could just spend any time in your community. The American people have made it clear they want accountability for what they are seeing happening, not only on their TVs, but in their communities. This colossal abuse of power, which we are seeing right now from immigration agents who are brutalizing our communities. That's exactly what Democrats are asking for. But unfortunately, our Republican colleagues are refusing to work with us on common sense solutions here. Now, I was Attorney General for 8 years in Nevada. I worked as a prosecutor right here in the U.S. Attorney's Office in D.C. I have been working with law enforcement my entire career. Local police officers are trained in de-escalation. They don't wear masks. They know how to do their jobs and keep their communities safe while gaining the trust of the community. And they are beholden to the Constitution, just like everyone else. What we're asking is not radical. We want federal law enforcement to be held to the same reasonable standards as state and local law enforcement. That means ending those roving patrols that are detaining U.S. citizens and law-abiding immigrants based on the way they look. Federal agents shouldn't be violating the Fourth Amendment rights and going into someone's home without a judicial warrant. Accountability, including congressional oversight, no masks, clear badge numbers, body cameras. This is where we need to be. And let me just be very clear. You don't just say we're going to give people body cameras and throw it off to people. If you want to know how to handle body cameras from local law enforcement, state police, come to my state. Come to my state. In 2017, 2018, we passed laws. But you know what we also did? We mandated policies and procedures on how they use those body cameras, because there are so many provisions and standards that go along with the use of these body cameras, the retaining of the videos, and yes, the right of the press to access some of this information. That's all we're asking the federal law enforcement to do the same thing. Nothing more, nothing less, that our state and local law enforcement are doing. And finally, let me just say this. The American people understand this. When ICE is saying we're going to go after the worst of the worst in your community, right? That we are only going after violent criminals. Well, of course, I think we all understand that. We don't want violent criminals in our community, but they're doing more than that. They're going after U.S. citizens. They're going after non-violent immigrants, families, and children. That's what we're seeing brutalizing our communities. And the American people, they're saying enough. And so what we are asking our colleagues in the White House to work with us. It's common sense. Work with us. Unfortunately, we're not seeing that. So I will say this. I am not going to support a CR. If my Republican colleagues can't come to the table and work with us right now and get this done, by the way, if they would just work with us, we don't need another CR. But because I don't see good faith in them working with us, which they should be willing to do, the White House, that's all we're asking. That's all we're asking at this point in time. So.
Senate Democrats are summarizing what happened today on Capitol Hill. DHS and ICE's chiefs both testified before Congress. They stood by their officers' and agents' actions in recent weeks, particularly in Minneapolis, where 2 citizens were shot and killed during ICE actions. Switching gears now, let's bring in our next guest. We are going to be chatting a little bit about retirement. Now, this figure might shock you, but the average U.S. worker only has $955 saved for retirement. Dan Doonan, Executive Director of the National Institute on Retirement Security, is joining us now. Dan, thanks for being here.
Thank you. I appreciate the chance to talk with you today about our new report.
Us too, because you hear $955 saved for retirement, and you just think there's no way that that is enough to even get by for a month or two. What do you want people to know about this average cost of retirement, or average figure rather, that people have saved? It seems awfully low.
Yes, it is alarming, and it does get a lot of attention. And I will say the $955 is the median, so it's essentially the average person what they have saved. And a big part of why that number is so low is about half of American workers are not participating in a workplace retirement plan. So when they go to work, about half of workers are not in a plan saving for their retirement. But I would note, even amongst 55 to 64-year-olds, the median person only has $30,000. So that 955 is amongst everybody, including younger workers. But even those approaching retirement, the median person has $30,000, and in terms of retirement income, that provides about $1,000 to $1,500 per year in inflation-adjusted income. So I really think when we talk about retirement, this should be part of the broader affordability conversation that the country's having.
Yeah. Really quick background on your organization, but it's a nonpartisan, nonprofit think tank based in Washington, D.C. Tell us a little bit more about what you guys do and how you got to these statistics.
Yeah, sure. So we are, like you said, nonprofit, nonpartisan. We generally exist to do research, and that includes taking stock of how our retirement infrastructure is serving Americans, but also to be thought leaders in terms of how our retirement systems could be improved in ways that expand access so more workers can have access to a plan, and that our systems work more efficiently and better for really all stakeholders, including workers and employers who are often offering these plans.
And I want to go back to something that you mentioned, Dan. A lot of people, they don't have the option to participate in a retirement plan, in a 401k, whether it's that their job doesn't offer it or otherwise. What's your recommendation, your advice for those individuals who don't have that opportunity? It's got to be more difficult to stash away and to save up when you're not investing your money elsewhere.
Yeah, there's definitely a behavioral component. If you go to work and you can easily sign up for a plan, have a few investment choices to choose from, we see the vast majority of people actually do that. They do save, they do participate, but there's major gaps in coverage. In terms of being offered a plan, a large company is very likely to be offering a plan to their workers. But when you get down to smaller businesses, they might not want to take on the burden to create a plan and run a plan. So we are seeing some efforts to allow employers to buy in, like pooled plans where the employer doesn't have to manage it and make all the financial decisions. And we also see, like in Illinois, there's a secure choice plan that serves as a backdrop for workers that don't have access in the workplace. So there are efforts, and I think in retirement, there tends to be a lot of working together in terms of solving problems. The secure choice plan is still pretty young, so we're not seeing the impacts that much yet, but it does give access, frictionless access to saving for workers.
And maybe a good retirement or reminder rather about retirement plans is for people who do have access to these plans at work to check in and to really look at what's being invested, what resources you have through your job, because a lot of these resources and plans go unsigned up for. People don't realize they have the option.
Yeah, that's right. If you do have access, this is a great way to save. It comes out of your paycheck. You don't have to write a check to a savings plan. It is a great way to do that. I do think there is a tension in terms of affordability. When you look at the cost of buying groceries, buying a home, saving for college, paying for daycare, we do find higher income workers are saving more. They're more likely to have a plan. The tax benefits are worth more for them. So we do see a big gap in the middle and below in terms of savings and the amount people can save.
And Dan,
so,
yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, what are you seeing trend-wise across different generations? You know, compare the Gen Zs to the older generation. How are they saving differently, and is one better than the other?
Yeah, I think when you look at retirees today, there's still a lot of households that have a traditional pension income. And if you remember, companies used to just provide workers a pension. It wasn't something you had to sign up for or decide how much to contribute to. This is something you just earned on your job. And when you look at Gen X, this is really the first generation where, you know, most people do not have, like a much larger share don't have access to a pension. And in some ways, we're the guinea pig on how this 401k experiment's going to play out. So, you know, I think we're still waiting to see the full impacts of this transition because, you know, retirement is a very, very long-term thing. You're saving for decades, and then you're going to need resources in retirement for more decades. So I think we're a little bit of a, you know, wait and see in terms of moving out of the traditional pension generations. And, you know, I think on the 401k front, we are seeing improvements in terms of, you know, auto enroll, auto escalate your contributions. And this is really to address the behavioral factors that led people to not participate or save too little or invest wrong. So we are seeing, I think, some improvements. And I think a lot of that came about because it was pretty clear that we needed to be doing better.
Okay, $1 million question, and I'm sure it depends on where you live, your habits, but how much do you need to retire comfortably? How much do you need to have saved up?
So there's no one right answer for that. I think it depends a little bit on, you know, do you own your home as you go into retirement? Are you still renting and some of your other financial situations? And generally, we want to see retirement income as a share of what you make when you're working. So if you're making $100,000 and you think you need $80,000 in retirement, that would be like an 80% replacement rate. And if you think in those terms, you can say, okay, this is the income I need. And a lot of financial advisors will talk about a 4% rule, which is essentially the income you'll get in retirement adjusted for inflation each year, should be about 4% of what you have at retirement. So you take out 4% the first year, the next year a little bit more for inflation. And maybe a simpler way to think about it is take your savings and divide by 25, and that's a rough estimate of the income that your savings will provide. I would say get your Social Security statements, understand those kinds of things as well, because that's a big part of the financial picture.
And does your organization have education materials for people out there who this is foreign to them? Any resources that you would suggest that people can kind of get themselves familiar with to understand more?
So our organization really focuses more on, you know, the big picture of retirement systems and less on financial advice. There certainly is a lot of that out there and available. But we tend to think more about retirement systems and what we could do to have retirement systems work better and serve working families better.
Great. And Dan, one more question. You know, my generation, millennials, it's been the talk of the internet in recent months, years, tend to prioritize spending now, taking that trip, you know, buying that gadget, instead of saving. That's, of course, not for everyone. Is this something you think will come back to bite millennials down the road?
Yeah, I think we're going towards an era where we're living longer, meaning you'll need more resources relative to your income. We're heading to a place where Americans will have more older adults than younger workers, right? The country's aging. So on many fronts, we're facing challenges on retirement. And I think being prepared will, be a better lifestyle in retirement for you, but also it's really good for the country because our social safety net and programs for seniors would be really expensive to afford if not a lot of people are prepared and go into retirement with resources to be self-sufficient.
Dan, thank you so much for joining us and for all of your insight. Really interesting topic here. Stay with us. Chicago Live will be right back, and joining us shortly is Paris Schutz to talk about the Bears Stadium. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Chicago Live. We have a special guest joining us today, political reporter Paris Schutz. Paris, let's talk Bears. Okay, so tell me about...
I can always talk Bears.
Tell me about your story yesterday.
Yeah.
New developments in this race to find a location for the stadium. Illinois lawmakers now crawling back.
I spoke with a lot of legislative sources over the weekend and yesterday, and I think they wanted to make it clear that Illinois is still very much in the running here. And I've detected kind of a tone shift here, because remember, for so long, Illinois lawmakers and Governor Pritzker were saying, I'm not helping out $1 billion corporation. And now we hear lawmakers like Cam Buckner, the state representative, and the governor saying, well, we want to come to a deal that is good for taxpayers and good for the team. So, what we reported yesterday was that they have been meeting, Illinois lawmakers, the governor's office, and the Bears nearly multiple times a week, from what I'm told. And they do have kind of a agreement on the bigger issues of, like, yes, they agree for infrastructure spending, and they agree on this legislation that would give the Bears the ability to negotiate property taxes with the community. It's still some details on that they're hammering out. So they don't have a bill yet. And one thing legislators were saying is, like, we're also trying to get some measures in there that would ensure affordability for ticket prices. So that's,
tickets
clearly,
are so expensive.
And clearly Illinois lawmakers want to win. They want to present to the people of Illinois, like, hey, we negotiated, we wrestled the Bears to the ground, and we got a bill that was good for taxpayers. But let me just quickly say, this is while Indiana is much farther along in their process.
Right. This is a tug of war. Gary, do you think it'll be maybe the Gary Berries?
No. It'll be the Hammond, the what? The Hammond what? The Hammond Bananas? Yes, I think Savannah Banana is taken. But no, so Hammond is the site they're looking for in Indiana. And that bill in the Indiana House, it's sitting in the Indiana House. It passed the Senate. The Republican governor is on board. And it would basically have a public authority be responsible for the stadium and finance all or part of it, and the Bears would pay rent. So when you're talking about dollars and cents, the Bears will spend a lot less money up front in the Indiana plan, but they wouldn't own their stadium. In Illinois, lawmakers, that is their red line. We're not giving the Bears, they say, any money for the actual stadium, but we could talk about these tax breaks.
And the Bears want to own their stadium. They've
They
said
well
that
they
for
they
a while.
they do, which is why you're right. They have said that, which is why it's interesting that this Indiana proposal is they would rent and the Indiana state would own it. And although it would give the Bears the option of buying it. Okay, so whenever in the process at some point. So it's like a difference between putting the money in up front versus not. So they could just pay rent for a while and then determine, okay, we have the money, now we're going to buy it and own it. So Indiana's trying to do this in a way to lure them and make it more favorable to them, but maybe not as favorable to their taxpayers.
Okay, so the viable site in Hammond, is it just grassland? Is it just an open plot?
That's such an interesting question because when I was there, it's really by Wolf Lake, and really the heart of it, where the structure would go, would be where there's a current golf course there, a public golf course. And
do you know which one?
I don't know. It's a public golf. It's like the Wolf Lake golf.
Sure.
It's a why? Are you a big time golfer?
My husband is.
Okay.
I don't know that he's been there,
To
but
the Wolf Lake?
that might upset people.
It might, but I think the Hammond mayor is so excited about the prospect of this big development and getting the Bears. So it would go on this golf course, and I saw surveyors there when I was there. It's like, well, what are they measuring? And they're measuring, like, they're surveying the ground. It's built upon slag, which for you geologists out there, you know what that is, and I don't. So it's built on slag. No idea.
No idea what that is.
I think it has something to do with like a lot of the industry there and some runoff from oil companies being there, and so they have to determine whether it can support a big structure. And from what I've been told, yes, it can. So it go where that golf course is, and there's a ton of industry around there, oil tanks and chemical factory, and the mayor of Hammond was saying the state is working on a deal. Buying them out, getting them out of there, and moving them so that the Bears wouldn't be in the middle of this industrial zone, because you know how industrial it is out there.
Right, and you mentioned now another place, Portage. What are you hearing about this? Another city trying to swoop in.
David Kaplan, the sports guy on ESPN 1000, tweeted that there's another offer coming in, and this is from Portage, and he said it would not be paid for with public money, and the Bears wouldn't have to pay any rent.
Huh.
I don't know how that works. I mean, someone has to pay for it. So I spoke with Kaplan a little bit, and he said that there's going to be an announcement, and it will have some kind of private backing.
Okay.
So we'll have to wait and see on that. I don't have any else to add on that. But Illinois, look, Illinois is where the Bears want. Arlington Heights where they want to go, and every indication I'm getting is, in this next couple weeks, as Indiana wraps up its legislative session at the end of February, if Illinois isn't further along, then the Bears are going to make a call here. So for the folks that say it's just leverage, that's not the message I'm getting out of them. Only George McCaskey and Kevin Warren know for sure.
Yeah, the clock is running down.
The clock is running, but everything I get is that they're very serious. They've done their due diligence on Indiana. If that's the better offer, then that's the one they'll take.
I think fans are getting impatient. The public's getting impatient. Do you think the Bears also just want to make a decision?
Oh, yeah. The Bears are frustrated. This has been going on now for more than 3 years, and there've been different ebbs and flows along the way. So they want this done, and every day that this delays, it costs more money. Costs go up, and they want to start hosting Super Bowls, and they want to start hosting Final Fours, and when Indiana is perennially in the Big Ten championship, they want to host the Big Ten championship.
Yep,
so they need a new stadium for that. The question is, right now, the question is whether it will be in Hammond or Arlington Heights. I don't know about this Portage. I think that's pie in the sky. So it's Hammond or Arlington Heights, and that's the decision.
Now, we heard back when they bought the old racetrack in Arlington Heights, they unveiled renderings. We're going to have maybe a hotel, restaurants, bars, various things for fans. Is there room to do that in Hammond too?
That's a question that I'm not getting a clear answer on. They say there's plenty of room. The mayor's going to build developments and malls, and he says, I really want a Ruth's Chris Steakhouse in my community.
Okay.
You know, I need the Bears here to do that. So, but I've talked to some folks that say really there isn't a whole lot of buildable space around there to build hotels and all the things that they want to build. So, and there's environmental questions. There's that land, as you know, driving through there has been home to lots of industry and oil and chemicals for many years, and it runs off into Lake Michigan. So there's questions about that. I don't think that this is a slam dunk here right now. And when this Indiana bill goes through, assuming it does, then it's just a framework. They still have to go back and strike the handshake deal with the Bears on how much money the state's going to provide and all that. So the Bears say next 2 weeks, but we have to wait and see. But Illinois lawmakers, I do think, got the message, and they've started to really ramp up.
They don't.
Get this done.
Bottom line, Illinois does not want to lose the Bears.
Politically, they didn't want to be seen as giving a giveaway to a big multi-billion-dollar company, but is it worse to be looked at that way, or worse to be remembered as the General Assembly that lost the Bears and the governor that lost the Bears? So that's what they got to think about.
Paris, thank you. Anything else you want to add?
Tune into the Chicago Report every night at 10 p.m.
Perfect.
Shameless plug.
Love it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Paris. We're going to take a quick 2-minute break, and we will be right back with much more. Welcome back to Chicago Live. I'm Casey Cronus in for Anita Blanton this afternoon. The time is 2:02 p.m. And next up, we are chatting about lawsuits filed against Meta and Instagram. We are bringing in Northwestern professor Courtney Blackwell. Courtney, thank you for being with us this afternoon to break all of this down.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So Courtney, tell me a little bit. I know there's a couple of different lawsuits. These are going to be landmark trials, and it sounds like they're both kind of happening at the same time. But if you could just kind of break down the two lawsuits. One is out of Los Angeles, and the other is out of New Mexico. Is that right?
Yes. And so the one out of LA is focusing on social media and whether or not it is causing addiction and mental health problems in youth. And the one out of New Mexico is also focused on social media and looking at YouTube, again, kind of this idea of mental health. I'm not affiliated with the trials or anything, and law is not my background. I come at it from the research angle here in terms of social media and youth mental health.
Yeah, and this is something that, we have seen for a while, is the risk of social media becoming addicting. Tell me a little bit about what is being argued in that lawsuit out of LA.
Right. So on the one hand, it's this argument that social media has certain features, design features, that are built into the actual product itself that is causing people, or in this case, youth specifically, to become addicted. So these product features, when you think about using something like Instagram or YouTube even, there are things like stories, and the stories are only there for 24 hours. So you have to get on to check the story. Or something that we refer to as infinite scrolling, right? So your feed never actually ends. You can kind of keep scrolling forever if you wanted to. And so there are these built-in features that they're arguing are that the media companies knew that those features would be addictive or have addictive qualities to them. And so that's kind of the main argument from the one side, from the youth who are suing these companies.
And Courtney, we know that all too well, is that endless scrolling. You're trying to go to bed or you're trying to get motivated to do something, and it's just like nonstop, right? The videos just keep coming up, or the stories, and it really is so hard to break that cycle. I understand that the woman who is kind of the face of this lawsuit out of LA, which we previously only had her initials, now I think we have her first name, but she is now 20 years old, and she argued that, she has suffered depression, suicidal thoughts. This is something that we are seeing in younger and younger students and individuals now. Tell me a little bit about, is this something you talk about with your classes at Northwestern?
Right. So we talk about this in terms of, we come at it from a few different angles. From the research perspective, when we look at the research and what it says about how kids use social media, even younger kids and teenagers especially, is where a lot of the research focuses. We don't have a clear story of what that impact is on youth mental health. From a neurodevelopment side of things, we know the youth brain. These are things we talk about all the time. It's developing, and it's not fully developed yet. And so there are certain components of just natural maturation that are happening that might make youth more susceptible to some of those design features. So if my prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for decision making and regulating my emotions, if that's not fully developed yet, and I'm sitting there and I have this endless feed, so that might reinforce this idea that it could become more addicting to me for the adolescent brain specifically. Whether or not that was the intent, that's not for me to decide. I think that's part of what's on trial here, is the intent of these design features.
Yeah, and do you have any advice for parents, with your background and your expertise, when it comes to limiting social media and kind of setting those parameters?
Great. So the field and even the American Academy of Pediatrics have a lot of resources for parents and for clinicians. And one of the things we've kind of moved away from is talking about screen time or time spent on social media or media in general. And we've really moved to think about what the AAP just came out with a few weeks ago. They called digital ecosystems. And it's really thinking about media and social media in this case as part of children's lives and thinking about how we might engage with social media as one component, but then you're also going to school. You also are sleeping. You're also going outside and having family time. And it's really just this one aspect of your life versus the only aspect. And I think they have a really great acronym going on right now with the AAP. It's the 5 Cs. And so instead of just thinking about the time spent, you have to think about the child. So you think about your individual child. What are they like? What's their temperament like? Are they doing other things besides using social media? Or is this something you might want to talk to them about? We talk about the second C is content. So what are they actually doing? It's a big range of things that you can do on social media, right? And there is research that shows sometimes, and a lot of these adolescents aren't just going on there for entertainment. They're going on there to seek mental health resources. They're going on there to engage with family and friends. There are all these positive components that adolescents could engage in. And so we really need to understand what they're doing. The third C is calm. And this is really about thinking, am I using social media or media to just as my coping mechanism? Is that how I'm regulating my emotions? Is that my only coping mechanism? And so for parents thinking about what do they see in their kids? Is that the only thing the kid uses and the only way they can calm down? And maybe that's a time to rethink, okay, can we build other strategies? Can we build strengths in these children to help them kind of expand their network of emotion regulation strategies? The fourth C is crowding out. And this gets somewhat to this, what they're calling addiction. And is social media or is media crowding out everything else? Is it taking over for other activities? And so parents thinking about, okay, what in kind of thinking about a pie chart, right? Is social media a really big part and everything else is really small, or is it just one component? So thinking about how the balanced digital ecosystem for your kid. And then finally, communication. And I think this is a big one, talking about it, being open about it. It's not necessarily an easy conversation, but there are some resources out there. The American Academy of Pediatrics, again, has a family media plan, and it really helps parents think through what they might want to work on, what they could talk to their kids about, different ways to start engaging and starting that conversation.
And Courtney, tell me, we've heard in the past, but that getting likes on social media or getting reactions, that it actually does release dopamine. Is that accurate? And is that concerning to you?
So there are some studies that have shown that, right? These are very controlled studies because they're actually looking inside your brain and to see that light up and to see that, yes, when you kind of get these social rewards, these likes or comments or positive feedback, it does light up certain regions of the brain in these studies that have done it. I would say it's the studies, we don't have a ton of research, right? This is kind of emerging, but it is concerning from the standpoint when we go back and think about that adolescent brain. And one of the things for adolescents, they have a heightened sensitivity for social rewards. If you think back to when you were a teen, what did you want? You wanted your peers to like you. So when you get those likes on social media, it's just one other way to kind of experience those social rewards. But I think one of the considerations here is that it's always around, right? Yeah. You can always grab your phone and see those likes and monitor it. And so it could reinforce this idea of kind of going back to get more likes.
So accessible, almost too accessible sometimes. Courtney, we understand that you are leading a symposium this week and that you'll be talking about some of your own research there, some of your own studies that you've conducted. When is the symposium and what will be the topic during that event?
Yes, so the symposium is tomorrow at noon Central. The topic is actually social media and youth mental health. And so I'll be talking about broadly what the research shows, and then some of our studies that have looked at both teenagers and how they engage with social media and what that looks like and their influence on their both positive mental health and problematic mental health. And then some of the newer research we have brings us down to the 8 to 12-year-olds, and that's a really understudied group. So social media, technically you have to be 13 to join, but we know younger kids are on. And so thinking about what do those 8 to 12-year-olds do? What does it mean for their health and development? And I think that's a really rich area to explore now.
And we understand that you surveyed a few thousand kids. Were those kids in the area? Was it all over the region, all over the country?
So this is part of a much bigger study. It's funded by the National Institutes of Health. It's called the Environmental Influences on Child Health Outcomes Study, or ECHO. We have right now over 30,000 children and their caregivers, and we're following them from birth through age 20.
Wow.
And so the 3,000 we surveyed, those happen to be the 8 to 12-year-olds that got surveyed that are social media users.
Okay.
They're located across the U.S. and Puerto Rico, and so they represent a very geographically diverse range of youth across the nation.
Yeah, and you raise a good point that I'm sure environment also has to do with habits. Is that something that you've seen based on where you live, maybe where you go to school, what your peers are doing?
Right. So one of the studies that I'll be talking about that looks at exactly that. And a lot of the work right now hasn't considered a lot of those environmental components. Something we found was that it was actually the peer relationships that mattered a lot more for youth mental health than the social media. So it was really, do you have high quality peer relationships? And that was much more likely to make you have better mental health than social media was to make you have worse mental health. So thinking about the peers, thinking about the context of the use, the schools, the environment, their family environment, there's a lot going on, their existing mental health condition, if they have any pre-existing conditions, that type of thing. So I think it's much broader than just, is it media alone.
It's fascinating, and I'm sure we'll continue to get more information over the years as social media progresses and things advance. Courtney Blackwell, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. The time now is 2:14. We're going to take a 2-minute break, and we will be right back. Welcome back to Chicago Live. I'm Casey Cronus, filling in for Anita this afternoon. Our next guest is here to talk about something that has consumed the media over the last week, the case of Nancy Guthrie, who went missing from her home over a week ago now. This, of course, is Savannah Guthrie, the Today Show host's mother, 84 years old. And we want to bring in our FBI expert today, who was formerly a leading hostage negotiator and kidnapping and security expert, Phil Andrew. Phil, thanks for being with us.
Glad to be with you.
Now, Phil, we want to mention you are running for Congress right now in the 9th District, but you're here today to give us your insight, your expertise on this case. Let's get right to those new surveillance images that were released by the FBI this afternoon. This is the first time that we have seen a subject, they're calling this person, not a suspect, not a person of interest, but a subject in this case. We saw this was a masked man at Nancy Guthrie's home. He had, it looked like dark latex gloves on, and it looked like he was kind of messing with the Nest camera. Tell us your first thought on these images that were released today, and also if you can weigh in on why it took so long to get these initial images out.
Well, first, our hearts go out to the Guthrie family as they navigate this really difficult and painful experience. What we're seeing is that law enforcement didn't have immediate access to this because of these cameras, and there was not a subscription. It doesn't really always keep that. So they were able to pull from that this resident images right before the cameras were disabled. And now this provides an important new clue. One, the assumption was that Miss Guthrie was taken by force and through a planned kidnapping. But now we actually have images and we proof that that is actually the case. And something now to share with the public that, well, this looks like somebody who is really taking great effort to disguise their identity. There are people who will recognize characteristics of height, build, gait, even potentially eyes, as this image is enhanced to illuminate some of those features. So that is where this investigation is now. It's unclear whether the kidnappers or the ransomers have made direct contact with anyone. There is a lot of hoax going on, and it creates a lot of confusion in this investigation and increases, obviously, the pain for the family. So it's one of the key elements here is for contact to be made and for some level of proof of life established. And that often is the most important element in a safe return of their loved one.
And this, as you mentioned, this is heart-wrenching for the Guthrie family. We've seen the series of videos that they've released over the last several days. Yesterday's video that Savannah released, she was pleading with the public. It wasn't really talking to the kidnappers, but it was just asking the public desperately that if anyone has any information to please come forward. Now, Phil, are we starting to think that perhaps the communications, the ransom notes that were sent to TMZ, sent to a local Tucson station, any indication that those were legitimate? I think that there was a sense that they were, but now is the question, well, maybe those weren't legit notes. Do you have any insight, or maybe if you want to weigh in on your thoughts?
Yes, my thought would be that these probably were not legitimate in ransoms because, one, the way they came in, and two, that deadlines passed and that no additional communication was established. And we continue to see the family making a plea for additional information. And unfortunately, there are, in this divisive atmosphere in our country and the way that social media is used, that it does attract hoax and those that want to just gather attention instead of being supportive of the family. So one of the key things here is responding to the family and law enforcement's encouragement for the community to provide specific information directly to law enforcement. Armchair detectives are not helpful. Filling up comments on social media pages will not help resolve this, but legitimate information given to investigators could help, bring Miss Guthrie home safely. And that's what I would encourage, is that anybody that's seeing this or hearing these pleas, if they have legitimate information, to get that to these hotlines and legitimate law enforcement, and don't add to the circular information and many of the conspiracy theories that are bubbling up.
Yeah, and you mentioned it too, but there is a lot that we don't know. There's a lot that detectives, investigators are looking into behind the scenes. And of course, they don't want to compromise the investigation. The FBI has now stepped up their role in it. What do you make of, Phil, that initial response by the Pima County Sheriff's Department? It seems like perhaps a couple of things were maybe missed, or that they were late to the game. We saw days later that investigators ended up on the roof and found a camera or a device that they hadn't found during their initial sweep. We know that the property was released. It wasn't taped off for several days. It was released back to the family before they went and started to look at the home again. Do you think that some things were maybe done in a way that had federal law enforcement been brought in sooner, we could have avoided?
Well, it's always easy to sort of second guess and cherry pick, but the reality is that law enforcement was responsive, and in these cases, there's a lot of confusion initially. And looking back, there's always things that we can improve upon, and professional law enforcement does that. They will do a debriefing and understand where they could have improved their response. It's always very helpful to bring in as many law enforcement partners as possible, as early as possible. And that may well have moved this investigation further if the FBI had been brought in immediately. And particularly, my background having been in hostage negotiation and knowing that our teams take a very holistic approach to this, both in the gathering of evidence, but interviewing of potential witnesses, but also being very careful as to what we would release publicly so that we maintain the integrity of the investigation. But there's so much pressure today in today's social environments, and the pressure for law enforcement to be sharing information with the media, that you really have to have a highly professional, highly well-trained team. And sometimes mistakes still happen. So the most important thing is that investigators are in place, that they're clearly coordinating closely and supporting the family, and that there's this consistent message, both seeking support, prayers, and the community's compassion, but also asking for the public to be vigilant and looking for those clues that might be useful and making sure they go to the right place.
Yeah, as you said, any legitimate tip could be what cracks this case. Now, Phil, let's talk a little bit about your background. What does that look like when you are going into a situation where there's a hostage or someone has been kidnapped? What is that process like? I imagine that you have to be very careful in the steps that you're taking when you are communicating with a potential kidnapper or abductor.
One of the most important things is, meeting and listening to the family. This is the worst moment in their life, and they will remember this, regardless of how this resolves. But one, showing up and making it clear that you're there to support the family, and that you're bringing skills and experience that are highly trained, highly practiced, and dedicated to helping this family resolve this in ways that their loved one comes home safely.
Yeah.
So that comes with a lot of listening, and also the credibility that we have done this many times and that this has worked out. But there's also a clear kind of textbook to follow, and making sure that we're disciplined in the message, that we are communicating with other family members so that they're all on the same page, and then coordinating with local, state, and federal law enforcement to set up the systems where this information can be received, vetted very quickly, and that leads are covered with fidelity. So all of this is well practiced. And one of the things that I found was most important is being present and available to the family. And some of that is from my own experience. You know, I got involved in the FBI and law enforcement and hostage negotiation because I was a hostage myself at gunpoint when I was 20 years old.
Wow.
And a 90-minute scenario with my mother and father being held at gunpoint, I was able to negotiate their release, but I unfortunately was shot in an attempt to disarm the attacker. So there's an element here too of lived experience, of really understanding and being able to empathize with exactly what's going on with this family, but recognizing that this is an experience that's unique to them and that they need all the support. And you want people who are professional, supportive, but also hopeful, because there's a lot of information to go through. And this investigation is not over by a long shot. And there is a lot of reasons to be hopeful here, but we have to be clear on our strategy and coordinated in our teamwork.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Phil. I'm sure your own lived experience has translated into many of your investigations. Now, what do you want to see next in this investigation? You said there's a lot more that still needs to be done, still a lot of questions that the public has. And of course, I imagine that the celebrity aspect of this, being Savannah Guthrie's mom, has perhaps maybe complicated things a little bit more. I'd be curious to hear your take on that.
Well, there's so much we don't know, but, you know, I have a suspicion that the fame of the family might be connected to the motivations around this kidnapping. We don't know that for a fact. The only time will tell with that, but there doesn't seem to be a reason why they would want to hurt Miss Guthrie. So this might have something to do with a statement or some kind of recognition that the perpetrator is looking for. That will reveal itself. But the most important thing right now is for this image to be shared, the images of the video being shared wide, and for us as a community, as a country, to really show our support by not adding to the noise and providing only that information that could be useful and giving that directly to law enforcement. That's a key point right now. With this new images, it could result in someone that recognizes the unique characteristics of those images. And we've seen that play out before, right? At the Brown attack, we saw that with the United Health attack, where all of this was really the public participating in a really thoughtful and compassionate and supportive way. And that's hard in a nation right now that feels so divided and people getting attention for different ways. But I'm confident that people will do that. Now, the second thing that we need some kind of communication established. And the most important thing in that communication will be what we call proof of life. That whoever is in control of this, that they're sharing an image or information that proves that they have control in this situation. And that's where this dialogue can be very helpful in understanding what their interests are, their motivations, and that often become the threads that we're able to resolve this peacefully and bring home people safely.
Yeah, we do hope that Nancy Guthrie is still out there. She's still alive. And Savannah mentioned yesterday in her video that she feels that her mom is feeling all of the prayers. Phil, there's of course concerns because she needs medication. Unclear if those medications were left at home. But tell me, during those videos, because you mentioned open communication, during those videos that the family released, I'm curious, do you think was an FBI official with them? Were federal agents with the family directing them on the language to use? Were those videos pretty well thought out, would you say?
Yes, generally. It's important to speak generally, but generally in these circumstances where law enforcement and negotiators involved, is that there's a high level of coordination. And it's not to interfere with the authenticity of the message. I mean, that comes clear, very, very clearly, that comes through. But it really is to just, in this scary moment, to help give the family confidence and some direction as to things that are going to be most helpful to move this towards safe resolution. And I would expect that law enforcement and negotiators would be very closely involved in helping the family find the right message for this moment.
And Phil, one more question, and again, we don't have a lot of information. There are things that investigators are keeping close to the vest, but with your expertise, if you can weigh in, and of course this is speculation, but do you think, based on what you've heard, that the person behind this is someone familiar to Nancy, maybe familiar to the family in some way? There were a lot of questions raised when federal agents returned to Annie Guthrie's home and were doing what appeared to be luminol testing in the garage. Do you think that someone who knows Nancy or knows the family is connected?
Well, I think I want to be careful about no, because it might not be a two-way street. This is somebody that knew the family, but the family might not have known them. Mm-hmm. Anybody, because they have such a high profile, and obviously the Guthrie family and its notoriety for being television personalities for a long time, that doesn't mean that they would know the potential perpetrator here. So that's important to note. Mm-hmm. So we want to be careful about that. But what I do think is that this is definitely somebody that has some emotional connection to the family that the family may not have any idea about, and they have keyed and focused on it. And only time and the investigation will tell exactly what that motivation is.
Phil, thank you so much for your insight. It's really fascinating to hear your background and your expertise on this topic, and we hope to hear from you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for staying with us on Chicago Live. We're going to take a quick 2-minute break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Chicago Live. It is 2:37 right now, and joining us is the general manager of one of Chicago's most popular hotels, the Langham. Anthony Zamora is with us now. Hi, Anthony.
Hi, good afternoon.
So exciting news for the Langham. Congratulations. But the U.S. News and World Report has named your hotel the #1 hotel in Chicago. Tell me about this. Are you so excited? But I know this isn't the first time, right?
Yes, we've been lucky enough to have received this award in prior years as well. But myself and the entire team here at the Langham Chicago just very excited about the recognition from U.S. News and World Report. And it's really just truly a testament to their hard work and dedication to deliver truly the best luxury hospitality experience in the city.
How do they come up with these rankings? Do you have any insight? You know, does someone come and visit the hotel, stay at the hotel? Is it someone that you don't know that they are a critic, let's say, who's coming to review the property? Or are you aware that they'll be heading out to different properties across the country?
Yes, that's a great question. In our business, we're constantly being scrutinized, constantly being audited from many different various outlets and sources. This one particular ranking from U.S. News and World Report, this one is actually a combination of all of our verified guest reviews, so online sources, and real true life experiences from our guests and their feedback. So this is really meaningful in that scope, that it is an award that we're being recognized for based off of the true experiences from our guests and what they're saying about us.
And we understand that there's continued momentum. Are you able to share about the Forbes news?
We will also have a big announcement about our Forbes rating tomorrow. So everybody has to stay tuned for that. But you know, we're excited because we will be you know, hitting a milestone of 10 years of participation within that program as well. So definitely looking forward to that as another announcement tomorrow.
Thank you, Anthony. And what's going on at the hotel this spring, this summer? Maybe some exciting pop-ups you guys have. I know the tea that you guys do is always changing and transforming. Yes. What are some events? You know, you don't have to stay at the hotel to take advantage of some of these experiences.
No, absolutely. And you know, to your point, we're always you know, staying with the calendar of events for the seasons. Everybody's just waiting for the weather to break in Chicago and some warmer days ahead. So, you know, we're looking forward to a very busy weekend for a combination holiday of Valentine's Day and President's Day this weekend. We'll have lots of fun activities in Travell Bar and Lounge. Our Schwann Spa, one of the best spas in the city, is also a great destination for that holiday. Looking forward after that is going to be the Dyeing of the River, which is an amazing Chicago tradition. And no matter the weather, everybody comes out to celebrate the river dyeing. And we have a great viewpoint from here in the hotel. We're located right on the Chicago River, and we have a wonderful celebration there. But you know, we have many great amenities in the hotel as well too. We have our afternoon tea lounge, the Pavilion, which you had mentioned, and offers a great kind of variety of themed teas throughout the year. We're looking forward to our spring installation of tea in the coming months. We also have some amazing activities for kids in the hotel as well too. We have a really fun experience in our cinema suite where individuals can have a private movie screening and enjoy some snacks and candies from the hotel. And then we also have a wonderfully newly renovated kids play space in the hotel that we call our Kids Suite, which has been in partnership with the Chicago Children's Museum. So we're always creating and innovating and you know, looking to create new experiences for our guests here.
Awesome. Now with this #1 ranking, huge honor, how do you maintain that? How do you keep up that standard? How do you keep the employees all on the same page, on the same team, with making sure that this stays as a #1 hotel?
Yeah, honestly, you know, I'm very lucky to be surrounded by a group of true professionals and who really are amazing at what they do. And it makes it seem so effortless to our guests, and that is the image that we're trying to portray. Okay. But it's really a lot of hard work. And all of these awards and rankings are truly earned by our colleagues and our staff, those on the front lines delivering that wonderful service and experience to our guests. But it really is all about consistency and a high performance culture that we have within the hotel, and it's not about scripts. It's making sure that every single one of our colleagues understands the goal of creating really an amazing experience, great moments, great memories for our guests. And when that all comes together and comes to the surface, then that's what allows us to perform at such a high level.
And Anthony, how many employees do you have at the Langham?
There are several hundreds of us that are day in, day out, and unique to our business. We obviously are 24 hours a day, being a hotel, so we never shut our doors. And once one ship goes home, then the other team is ready right behind us to take up the reins. But large group of really hardworking individuals.
And any predictions you have for this spring or summer in general about the hotel industry? Are things looking good in terms of booking and capacity? What are you seeing, and what are you looking forward to seeing in the coming months?
Yes, the year just began, and the first few months of the year for Chicago, obviously from a weather perspective, are always very difficult. Right. So we look forward to the weather turning and becoming a little bit more favorable. But the start to the year has been favorable, and we have a really good outlook for the year, both from an inbound travel perspective, convention business. We're seeing a lot of sustained business from local staycations, right? That has become a trend over the last few years, where people are just vacationing and experiencing their own city within they live in. And the outlook is very favorable. And an award or recognition like this also is really wonderful for the city of Chicago, because it brings us to, again, that national conversation of Chicago really being a amazing travel destination within the United States, as it consistently, as a city, continues to be ranked as one of the best cities in the country.
Would you say after the slow season, when it is so cold, is it St. Patrick's Day that's kind of that first event in the city where you're seeing the bookings go up?
Most definitely. I think it's kind of a turning point for a lot in the city. I know March sometimes is a little bit early for a weather change, but here in Chicago, I think we're hopeful that that will mark the turning point of some warmer days ahead. But yeah, I would say that would be the kickoff to really more of that festive and outdoor season here in the city.
And we see that the hotel is ranked 3 nationally. Anthony, are you going for that top spot next year in Chicago and in the U.S.?
Yeah, that would really be an amazing achievement for us. And, in our pursuit of delivering, luxury hospitality at the highest level, we're constantly trying to be better every single day and continuing to, refine that guest experience. So hopefully one day, number one is in the sights for us, and then also for the city of Chicago.
Really exciting stuff. Thank you so much for being here. General Manager of the Langham in Chicago, Anthony Zamora. The hotel was just named by the U.S. News and World Report as the #1 hotel in Chicago. Stay with us here on Chicago Live. We will be right back. Welcome back to Chicago Live. We have another special guest joining us, my colleague, Terrence Lee. Tell us a little bit about this story you've been working on today, just in time for Valentine's Day, but people are getting scammed.
Well, I mean, it's normal now to date online, is it not? Dating apps and whatnot, matchmakers. But people are getting caught in scams, and it's the people who are saying, I'm too smart to get caught up. And that's exactly what the scammers are counting on. So I met this local man 2 weeks ago. He got scammed out of $70,000.
No, Terrence.
He met this young lady on Facebook dating. Started out great. They met last August, just chatting on Facebook dating. Then it transferred over to WhatsApp. Getting to know each other, brothers, sisters, likes, dislikes, political views. They even got that deep. And it felt real for him.
Right.
She took an interest in him. He was looking for love. He was looking for a connection. Then things took a turn. They started FaceTiming more, FaceTiming every day. He's believing it. He's feeling it. He's falling in love. And then comes the ask, and this is the big red flag that all the experts I spoke with for the special report tonight that you should watch for. She immediately asked for money. And she said, I'm investing in crypto. You should join me. It's so easy.
Oh, no.
Look at, and started sending pictures of her on planes and hold on, you gotta see this. Her on airplanes, living an extravagant life. And he was, okay, she's doing pretty well at this. I should try it too. Started small, $100. Started growing. The app showed profits, and he researched the app. The app turned like he thought the app was legitimate. It looks legitimate. Saw that he was getting returns. Put more money in. Earned more money. Kept putting more money in. At this point now, he's borrowing money from friends and family. Seeing more returns though, and he's able to withdraw money from it as well, which is another thing the scammers do. So you trust the system.
So he's like, okay, and I'm making some money.
I'm believing
this is legit.
Then he takes an even bigger leap and takes out a $40,000 loan from the bank.
Was that because she said, I need more, I need $40,000 now for this or that?
And by that point, she had already hooked him emotionally, so now she was getting him financially. So a couple of things started not to add up for him. He just one day said, like, is this for real, or are you scamming me? And she just goes, yes. And he's like,
admitted it.
Yeah, and he goes, why are you scamming me? And she writes, because you're stupid.
No. And so you have to think that there were other people behind it too, that it wasn't just her.
And that is what we learned from the experts. And this is why it's so hard for police to work on these cases, because it is a team, it is a network. And very seldom are the people ever in the U.S. They're in Nigeria, they're overseas, so it's hard for local police to track them down. So one of the AI experts I talked to, he is skilled at finding these people, skilled at detecting AI. He also helps people like the young man, the man I spoke with, not using his real name, we'll call him Grant Trust, that's what I call him in the story. He helps those people track down the people who have scammed them and try to get their money back. But in most cases, you are not getting your money back.
And with crypto, I'm sure it's harder to track that and to recover it.
Here's the twist. I showed him, the AI expert, I showed him the young lady's photo.
Oh no.
Within 5 seconds, he said that's AI.
So how did he FaceTime her?
There's apps. There's apps.
Filters.
And yes, he gave me a stat too. I had it somewhere here, but like AI, an increase of 70%. People are using it for these scams. You can use it to video chat with someone.
So concerning. And to think, you think things are going well, you're connecting, or so you think.
He's picturing a wedding, he's picturing kids, he's picturing the white picket fence. Then she gets him again because she's like, hey, I feel bad that you got scammed. Here are some lawyers you should reach out to and they can help you get your money back.
Oh no.
Casey?
He hired them.
The lawyers were a scam as well.
Of course.
And they took him for $3,000.
So in total, he $70,000. Oh, and you could do so much with 70 grand.
Oh my goodness, a whole lot.
I guess this is a good reminder that, in-person interaction to confirm maybe your suspicions, even if you're FaceTiming things, you think things are going well, but that, you can't put a price on that in-person interaction.
I talked to a former FBI operative as well who helped the U.S. catch one of the biggest spies in American history. But he was saying they are getting so sophisticated with these scams. They may have like 3 women talking to you on Facebook dating so they can get more information about you. So then boom, when this young lady reached out to Grant Trust, her name was Kay, she had already had, whoever it was, already had several other profiles that were getting information about him to make it feel even more personal when he found Kay.
It's so targeted.
So
it's
intricate.
So calculated.
So intricate.
And to think that this AI woman was probably talking to many other individuals.
Her profile is still on Facebook dating. It's on a couple other dating apps that we found. Same initial always. So it's always a K, but it's Kelly. Cassandra, sorry, it's just an example I had because you're sitting right there. But no, it's wild. I felt
it's
for him.
Heartbreaking.
He broke down during the interview. He is now in therapy. Really, he's like, I don't know if I'll ever trust anyone again. He's not told anyone in his life. Like, no, he's not told family. He's not told friends, coworkers. We were the first. Besides the FBI, he reported to the FBI, reported to the Better Business Bureau, also reported to local police. We were the first people he was able to sit down besides his therapist and actually open up about what happened. He just doesn't want anyone to get caught up like he did.
And he shouldn't be ashamed because this happens all the time and people never speak about it. They just kind of take the loss and move on. But for him to open up is going to help other people out there, even if they maybe think, wait a second, who is this person I've been messaging? Do these pictures add up? Where do they say they lived? Like, hold on, let me take a step back.
So today at 4, we'll go over how to spot AI a little bit easier. The expert's biggest advice was if it's too perfect that it's fake. But I said, like, listen, people on TikTok thought I was AI as well, and I am a real person sitting here right in front of you. So it's not easy to detect. Within the FBI guy walks you through what steps to take once you realize you've been scammed, like contacting your bank immediately. Good. So we try to cover every basis with this story because no one else needs to lose 70 grand. And this is the stat I found too. I don't have it here, but Illinois total lost like $360,000. We were like the 7th most scammed state in 2024. So the people out there who are like, no, they ain't gonna get me. I'm too smart for that.
Right.
It's happening. So they clearly know how to get people.
Yeah, and to think too that AI can be used for many good things, but also so many things like this. And it's wild how that landscape is evolving, and now it's hitting the dating scene.
Yeah, and it used to be easier to spot AI because there would be an extra digit on the hand, or the eyes would look dead. But now they're able to like put a little razzle dazzle in your eye, and you 5 digits. There's no extra one hanging. So, again, if something like this is happening to you, that's another thing that scammers look for. They're hoping that you are ashamed and you are embarrassed and too embarrassed to come forward. But you gotta let someone know, a trusted friend, better yet, the FBI, the police. We also have all the contact information for people you should call if you feel like you have been scammed on our website right now, because they really ramped this up in January for Valentine's Day for that purpose.
Right in time. Well, Terrence, thank you. We will look for that report at 4 o'clock. Stay with Chicago Live. We've got much more for our next hour. We'll be right back.
I'm real. I'm not AI.
Welcome back to Chicago Live. Joining us now is a UIC professor, Professor Stephen Schwinn, to talk a little bit about the SCOTUS tariffs decision. We've covered this story extensively over the last year, and one of these lawsuits that ended up in the Supreme Court is a lawsuit that was started by a company out of Vernon Hills. Learning Resources and Hand to Mind are two of their brands, but it is a toy company that sued the Trump administration over tariffs. Their case ended up all the way in the Supreme Court of the United States. In November, they had their hearing date, and we have been waiting for the justice's opinion on this. Professor Schwinn, thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Great to see you as always. So tell us, each of these decision days, we've kind of been waiting on the edge of our seat to see if this is the day that they will rule on the tariffs. It hasn't happened yet. I understand the next decision day is coming up in the next week or so. Why do you think it's taking so long?
Casey, it's a really good question, and I got to say that's a head scratcher. Many of us thought this tariff decision would come down quickly given how important it is. And remember, the tariffs are still in effect, so these tariffs are still affecting our economy. They're still operating as a tax on consumers in the United States while this case is pending at the Supreme Court. My best guess is that there are some complications in the case that are causing the justices to think about it a little bit harder than they might think about an ordinary case of this magnitude. Usually we would expect major decisions to come out in June, sometimes late June, even early July. But again, given how important this case is to the economy, many of us were thinking it would come out quickly. It's just not happening.
And Professor Schwinn, does the U.S. Supreme Court kind of have the autonomy to work at their own pace? I mean, if they wanted to, could they extend this until June or July?
They do. What a job, right? Yeah. They can work at their own they can work at their own pace, and if they want to release a decision quickly, they know how to do that. They've showed us in recent years that they know how to do that. And if they want to sit on it and take their sweet time, they can do that too.
Talk a little bit about the implications of their decision. Two lower courts had ruled in favor, and that's what brought this to the Supreme Court, ruled in favor of the toy company and others who have filed this lawsuit against the tariffs. Tell me what the implications are based on their decision, whichever way they go, and how this could impact the way that businesses across the nation are operating.
Yeah, it's a really good question. We're seeing new information come out almost every day, it seems like, with estimates about the tariffs' effects on our economy, on individual households, and projections about how much individual households will pay per year under the tariffs of varying amounts. And so this could have a sweeping effect on the economy one way or the other. If the Supreme Court upholds the lower court's opinions and strikes the tariffs, then the tariffs will go away, at least for a while, Casey. But it's important for viewers to remember that the president has maybe a half dozen other authorities by Congress to issue different kinds of tariffs in different situations that could in some ways replace the tariffs that President Trump issued on Liberation Day, and then these so-called trafficking tariffs that he issued against Mexico, Canada, and China. And so it's not clear, but my guess is that the White House is preparing a plan B at this point to impose tariffs under different statutory authorities if the Supreme Court strikes the tariffs under this particular statutory authority. So we may see some of this come back. But if the tariffs are struck, then the court and the White House are going to be dealt with another really big question, and that is, how do we repay companies that have already paid these tariffs, or even consumers that have already paid these tariffs? The court didn't really address that at oral argument, and we're just going to have to see how that works out if that happens. Now, if on the other hand, the court upholds the tariffs, I think there are two things to keep our eye on. One is the sheer amount of the tariffs. These are having a tremendous impact on our economy. Again, new projections coming out almost every day about the effects that these are having on our economy. And if the Supreme Court upholds them, they will remain in effect and continue to have these economic effects. But there's a bigger picture here, too. If the Supreme Court upholds President Trump's authority to issue these tariffs, what it really is telegraphing is that the president could issue any tariffs, willy-nilly. And the president has indicated his willingness to do that. And so the Supreme Court could be potentially giving the president just a tremendous amount of power over our economy if they uphold these tariffs.
And I want to talk about something you just mentioned, but the resolution, how this would be rectified if, let's say, SCOTUS does strike down the tariffs. We're talking millions, billions of dollars. I mean, this is going to be a gigantic challenge for the government to, make good on this. What could that look like? I think when we spoke previously, you said it could take years for that to be solved.
It could. That's going to be a really hard problem if and when the court comes to that. Now, the court could dodge that bullet by simply making a prospective ruling applying only to the future and not demanding that the government reimburse for tariffs already paid. But if the court does demand that the government pay for tariffs already paid, that's going to be a big headache for the government. And I'm not quite sure how they're going to work that out. I have heard some buzz that the government has payment systems in place that they could do this without too much difficulty. But remember, these are going to be very, very hard to sort out for corporations like those right here in Chicago. What they've paid in tariffs, how they're going to get reimbursed in tariffs, and the length of time that might take, this could be quite a headache.
Yeah, the toy company that we mentioned that has several brands, learning resources and Hand to Mind being two of them. The company execs had previously told me in the last few months that in 2024 they paid $2 million in tariffs, and in 2025 they were on track to spend $14 million in tariffs. Professor Schwinn, tell me a little bit just what this has done to many businesses, not just here locally, but across the nation.
Right, exactly. For small businesses, this is having a devastating impact. I mean, businesses, of course, have to pass these tariffs on to consumers. And so the tariffs are really a tax on people who are buying these products that depend on imported inputs or otherwise imported goods. And so ultimately, the tariffs really are dispersed across the economy to the tune of something like, some estimates have been as high as $2,500 per household per year if these tariffs stay in place. That's big, and it's big for the companies too, especially small businesses like the plaintiffs in this case that have to figure out how they're going to afford multi-million-dollar payments and tariffs. Can they pass those all on to the consumers? Do they have to absorb some of them themselves? How do the economics of that all work out, and what does that mean for the future of these small businesses?
And I want you to kind of summarize for our viewers just the rarity of a case making it all the way to the Supreme Court. To think that, this Vernon Hills toy company sued the Trump administration, and look where their lawsuit has ended up. Talk about just how rare it is for a case to make it this far.
This is extraordinary. It's really unusual for cases to get to the Supreme Court. Of course, we talk about the Supreme Court all the time because it's the final decision maker in our legal system and under our constitutional system. But in fact, the court only hears about 65 to 70 cases every year out of the thousands, even tens of thousands, that petition the court for review. The court itself gets to decide which cases it's going to hear, and so it can limit its docket to that 65 to 70 per year. It really is an unusual thing for a case to get to the Supreme Court. That said, Casey, this, I think, was an obvious candidate to get to the Supreme Court. This case is having tremendous effects on our economy, and given the legal questions at issue and the economic impacts of the tariffs, this was really a case that was destined for the Supreme Court.
And just to paint a clearer picture of what that hearing day was like back in November, if you could explain, because not many people get to sit in that gallery when the Supreme Court has a hearing, but talk a little bit about the process of hearing dates and who speaks. And it sounds like it's more of a question and answer versus giving your lengthy argument.
It really is. So both parties will have an opportunity to make an argument. The attorneys for both parties will present an argument to the court, and it very quickly turns into a very active sort of discussion, a Q&A between the justices and the attorneys. What the justices here are probing are different aspects of the case, what they're interested in, the legal questions involved. Now, the justices in this case didn't focus so much on the economic impact of the tariffs. What they were really asking is, does the act that the federal law that President Trump cited in support of his authority to implement these tariffs, does that law actually allow the president to implement these kinds of tariffs? And at the core of it, that's a debate between whether the tariffs operate as a tax, which is a traditional congressional function that the president can't do unilaterally, or instead are these tariffs a form of kind of regulation on the international stage, as the Trump team would have it, where President Trump is using tariffs not to tax consumers, but to leverage other companies to adopt certain policies. And so these were very technical arguments at the Supreme Court. It ran quite long. The justices seemed skeptical on the whole of the president's arguments about his authority to implement the tariffs. But I got to say, it's always a guessing game what's going to happen with the case after the Supreme Court hears oral arguments. It's really difficult to predict. And I would say this one in particular is hard to predict.
And now we wait.
Now we wait.
All right. Thank you so much, Stephen Schwinn, professor of law at UIC. Always great to chat with you. Your insight is so helpful to us and our coverage. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks so much for having me. Take care.
Bye. All right. We're going to take a quick break. Stay with us here on Chicago Live, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Chicago Live. Joining us now is Ken Walczak from the Board of Directors of Dark Sky International and Senior Manager of the Adler Planetarium. Ken, thanks for being with us today.
Sorry, I was muted there. Thanks for having me.
No worries. And am I saying your last name right, Walczak?
Good enough. It's Polish, so, you can pronounce it a couple different ways.
How do you say it?
Walczak's fine.
Walczak.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being with us. So we want to talk about this really fascinating topic, but keeping our skies dark to protect wildlife. Now, in Copenhagen, there was recently a stretch of highway where red lights were installed, and this is supposed to help the bats in the area, some other wildlife. What can you tell us about this? Why red? And what results, if you know, are they seeing?
I don't know if there's results yet. It's a kind of a new project that I was reading about. But the intention is that if you have an area where there's a known population of wildlife that might be threatened or has a nocturnal sort of habit, you want to protect that area. You want to protect that wildlife. And in this case, it's these bats that can be attracted to or actually averse to light. Well, but then if you have a stretch of road that requires some lighting for safety or navigation, you want to have light there. But is there a way, I think this is what the intention of this project is there a way to actually protect the animal populations there, the nocturnal animals there, as well as providing light? And I think that's what they're doing with this highly red light.
And what do you want viewers to know? I mean, we're so used to, especially here in Chicago, but everything's lit up. But what can viewers at home do to protect local wildlife? Do you recommend that people keep certain lights off during certain seasons? How can we translate this here at home to Chicago and the surrounding suburbs?
Well, glad you asked, because, as part of Dark Sky International's mission is to reduce light pollution. And for just so many reasons, everything from safety to, like we're talking about, the health of ecology, as well as the climate issue, using too much energy. And it really starts at home. And that's a good point you brought up about, what can you do? And the Dark Sky International actually came up with a few years ago a thing called the 5 Principles of Responsible Outdoor Lighting. And it's a real simple 5 takeaways of questions you ask. Let's say you have a big light in your backyard, and you have it there because it's you think it's for security reasons. Well, I mean, if you had that light on a motion sensor or a timer, or any other kind of device, you could actually limit the amount it's used, because especially during, let's give one good example, during bird migration seasons, which are in the spring and in the fall, birds navigate through starlight. And in fact, 80% of all migratory birds migrate at night. And they're using starlight. They're even using compasses, in a sense, using the magnetic field of the Earth to navigate. But now you can imagine if you're a bird flying over the city of Chicago, looking down, it looks like a starry sky. And so it actually can disorient birds. Lit windows are particularly bad. As you might remember from a few years ago at McCormick Place, when they had a nighttime event, the lights were on, and just the weather situation happened to be very, I should say, challenging for migratory birds. Over 1,000 birds were actually killed in one night from window collisions because of the lit windows. So think about that at home. If you have lights on during these periods of the year, like I said, spring and fall migration, you could actually help prevent a lot of bird fatalities.
Yeah, and you mentioned a good point with the windows. People could easily put decals up, right? Like if they have, big windows where there might be a concern that migrating birds could crash into them. But recently we were out in the suburbs at a wildlife center, and inside they had, inside and outside, but to showcase they had them inside, but then outside as well, but almost like textured glass, where it wasn't a sticker or a decal, but just almost like part of the glass was etched, and that, we're told too, is helpful to protect the birds?
Yes, I'm not an expert on this, but you are right. In fact, that's kind of the end of the story with the outcome from the McCormick Place incident a few years ago. Is that because of the international public outcry about that one night, they put on a window treatment across all of the windows. And according to researchers at the Field Museum, because of those, there's like points on the windows that have enough distraction. If I believe, like I said, I'm not an expert in this myself, but it indicates to a bird that it's not a throughway in a sense, and that was enough to almost eliminate almost all bird collisions that have been seen at the old McCormick Place building. So yes, window treatments are a good solution, but you think about if you can prevent even the light. Remember, this is going to be at night, where a light on a window for inside, looking through a window for a bird looks like a throughway. So if that light wasn't there, it would actually avoid it entirely. So you could do the window treatment, but I would actually recommend just not even trying to be cognizant of the light you're using that's shining out.
Now, as education continues with your organizations, with other organizations, do you foresee other cities catching on to what Copenhagen is doing, for example, with those red lights?
The red lights are, like I said, a very specific application because it's about this bat population. Research has shown that certain bat species are not really sensitive to red light. They see in maybe higher frequencies. So that's why in this example in Denmark, they're using red light because if you might have actually heard about the beaches in Florida where they have turtle-friendly lighting, which is very similar. It's a very orangish, kind of reddish light that doesn't affect, in a sense, the vision of turtles. So it's a very similar thing where they're trying this application for this specific species. Now, I will say that there's no one size fits all color of light that it will actually prevent all disturbances of nocturnal creatures. So in this case, yeah, red light probably is appropriate. But there are other species of nocturnal insects and other animals that do see red light at night. So eliminating the light as much as possible is probably the best solution. Now, in the region, by the way, just to let you know that Dark Sky International recognizes communities if they do the work and they actually can apply to be what's called an internationally recognized dark sky community. And we happen to have 3 in our region, by the way. Homer Glen, Hawthorne Woods up north, and also Beverly Shores in Indiana. And there is, I can tell you, there are efforts from some other towns to seek this accreditation as well. And that requires having certain ordinances, enforcing those ordinances, controlling your light, for example, maybe even reducing street light brightnesses, and turning off lights when they're not needed. There's a lot of good examples.
Yeah, conserve energy, but also help wildlife at the same time. Can anything happening that you want to touch on before we wrap up at the Adler Planetarium, this what we have remaining of winter and this spring? Anything new and exciting?
Well, spring break's coming up, and we're going to do a lot of focus at the Adler of public-facing programs. If you come to the Adler one day in spring break, you might have an entire different experience on another day because, we're like I said, really focusing on the spring break period. That's going to have a lot of really great activities for kids, adults, and everybody else.
All right, Ken Valchik, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate you. And we will be right back. Stay with us here on Chicago Live.
All right, thanks.
Welcome back. We want to take you back out to Washington, D.C., where Senator Dick Durbin is part of a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing on the Somali daycares in Minnesota. Let's take a listen.
So it wasn't any evidence in her trial. To think of what has happened to this 30-year-old woman's life, born and raised in Chicago, an American citizen, shot by these ICE agents on the streets of Chicago.
And they bragged about it.
They brag about it. He was one of the shooters said, "I got 5 bullets and 7 holes." It was quite a shot. He's very proud of himself. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing. You know, I think it is amazing that Democrats never seem to focus on innocent victims who are shot and killed by illegal aliens that their policies have led into this country. They never seem to say names like Jocelyn Nungary in my hometown of Houston, who was raped and murdered, a young girl, by 2 Venezuelan gang members that Joe Biden had in custody and released, and they came to Houston and raped and murdered that beautiful little girl. They never seem to mention someone like Laken Riley, a nursing student, beautiful young woman, murdered by an illegal alien the Democrats have released. They never seem to mention anyone like Kate Steinle, a beautiful young woman, 28 years old, in California, shot on a pier by an illegal alien who had been released over and over and over again. We have had Kate Steinle's father testify before this committee. He held her head in his hands as she died, and her last words were, "Help me, Daddy." And yet, for my Democrat colleagues, it seems there's no limit to how many Americans can be murdered by illegal aliens, and yet they simply don't care. They still support open borders and releasing murderers and releasing violent criminals. We're here today because of the Democrats' open border policies and the damage it's done to this country, but we're also here today because Minnesota's welfare system has been treated like an open ATM, and the taxpayers are the ones getting robbed. Ms. Gambler, GAO has reported that the federal government loses hundreds of billions of dollars each year to fraud and improper payments, much of it in public benefit programs. Is that correct?
Yes, GAO has reported both on estimates of federal government losses due to fraud, as well as estimates of improper payments government-wide.
You may recall the infamous Leering Center, whose blacked-out windows and childless facilities have become emblematic of the public programs fraud currently plaguing Minnesota. Mr. O'Brien, when investigators encounter fraud this obvious, does it usually represent just a single isolated bad actor or the visible tip of a much larger scheme?
No, it's usually the visible tip of a much, much larger scheme. Fraud has a tendency not to occur in a vacuum.
In that instance, the fraud was so blatant that the owners of the business couldn't be bothered to spell the organization's name correctly on the public signage. Mr. O'Brien, does fraud of that magnitude typically persist because it's difficult to detect or because oversight and enforcement break down?
It tends to persist because oversight and enforcement break down, and it tends to spread geometrically.
The Somali fraud problem in Minnesota is not confined to child care centers. Federal prosecutors in Minnesota expect that half of the more than $18 billion spent since 2018 on 14 different Minnesota welfare programs may prove to be fraudulent. To put that figure into perspective, the amount of fraud, if confirmed, may approach the entire GDP of the nation of Somalia. Mr. Hankinson, once funds are laundered and sent overseas to fragile or corrupt jurisdictions, is there any realistic prospect of recovering them?
Only if they come back and spend them.
In many respects, Minneapolis has become the Mogadishu of the Midwest. As the chairman of the Subcommittee on Federal Courts Oversight, Agency Action and Federal Rights, I'm proud to have held a hearing last week on the issue of fraud within the Minnesota Somali community and beyond. But the problem of fraud doesn't stop there, and neither does our inquiry. Our shared civic culture rests on something uniquely American, a respect for the public commons. It is clear, though, that though Minnesota opens its doors in the early 1990s to a massive number of Somali immigrants, that kindness was not reciprocated. Instead, it was exploited again and again and again, and that's simply unacceptable. Mr. Beer, can any welfare system long survive if large-scale fraud is excused and explained away rather than confronted?
No.
It would be entirely naive to assume that fraud of this magnitude simply stopped at public program frauds. I encourage you to examine the graph behind me. What do you notice about the usage of public programs among Minnesota's Somali immigrant population? 81% of Somali households in Minnesota receive some form of welfare, compared to 21% of non-Somali households. 54% of Somali households receive food stamps, compared to 7% of non-Somali households. 73% are enrolled in Medicaid, compared to 18% of non-Somali households. And 27% receive cash assistance, compared to 6% of non-Somali households. My question to the panel, and this is my final question, is importing vast numbers of people from an impoverished nation, putting the majority of them on public welfare for years and decades at a time, and then turning a blind eye while they steal billions of dollars from the taxpayers. Is that helping America or hurting America? Each of you has a chance to answer that. Ms. Gambler.
Yes, thank you, Senator. I would just say that your question really speaks to the work that GAO has done as it relates to leading practices for managing fraud risk. We've put out a framework for agencies that can help them better put in place processes and controls up front to prevent fraud risks, and then also have policies and practices in place to really tailor their anti-fraud activities and anti-fraud approaches.
I believe in the melting pot. I'm an immigrant, but to melt, you need heat. You've got to put heat on people to make sure they obey laws and learn how we do business in the United States.
Is that helping or hurting America? It's a simple question.
I think if we ignore fraud, we're hurting America, of course.
Okay. Mr. Linderman?
That's not in the U.S. national interest, Senator, and we know that Somalia is a high fraud country. To bring people from that country who cannot integrate into our systems is not in the U.S. national interest.
Mr. O'Brien?
I believe it was Milton Friedman who said you can have a welfare state or you can have open borders, but you can't have both.
Mr. Beer?
We can build a wall around the welfare state, and that would be a lot better for taxpayers than building a wall and keeping out all these legal immigrants who can come and
Is this
contribute.
helping or hurting America?
Certainly, the welfare state is a problem, but
Mr. Schwartz?
It is not unusual for immigrant populations to have a high degree of assistance early in after their arrival, but we are already seeing statistics that the net benefit economically of Somali presence in the United States far outweighs the cost.
So your
and
testimony is this massive welfare usage is helping America, and the fraud is helping America?
Not the fraud. We need to go after the fraud, which makes all inexplicable the Trump administration's decision to take actions that has decimated the U.S. Attorney's Office in Minnesota. I can't understand it. Can you understand it?
So simple question, is this helping America or hurting America?
The Somali presence in the United States is helping America. That graph
for the Minnesota taxpayers who had $9 billion stolen from them, sir, the Minnesota taxpayers who had $9 billion stolen from them, it has not helped them, and the American taxpayers who are supporting a dependent population who are here for one reason, and that is to vote Democrat and give money to elect Democrats. And if it robs the American taxpayers and endangers our security, for our Democrat colleagues, that is a perfectly acceptable trade-off.
Speaking loudly does not make it true.
Your time has expired.
It just doesn't.
Your time has expired, Mr. Schwartz.
Mr. Linderman and Mr. Hankinson, I want you to respond to Mr. Beer's criticism of slowing the flow of adjudications because of the lack of vetting of migrants during the Biden administration. Do you think additional vetting is appropriate in slowing the adjudications by USCIS is a good idea or a bad idea in order to determine what the background is of these individuals?
Mr. Chairman, it's a good idea to slow any visa process and to be sure when we are issuing a document, refugee, whatever the status that admits a foreign national into our country, the obligation of the State Department or DHS has to be clear that that person is someone we know who he is or she is before we admit them into the country. Otherwise, why are we there?
Mr. Hankinson?
I do think everybody deserves a decision in their case in the end, even if the answer is no. But having let in an untold number of many millions of people under parole, released at the border, and having so many pending asylum cases, I think it is a good idea to pause and figure out exactly where we are and maybe revise our system.
You just heard some commentary from the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing in Washington, D.C. It's about those Somali daycares out of Minnesota. You heard from Illinois Senator Dick Durbin, also Texas Senator Ted Cruz, obviously opposite sides of the aisle there. We're going to take a quick break, and we've got a little bit more coming up. Welcome back to Chicago Live. Stocks closed up 52 points today, the third straight record high. This, of course, after the Dow Jones last week surpassed 50,000 for the first time in history. Now, there is some concern because the January jobs report is due to be issued tomorrow. That's a key indicator of where the stock market lies, and it's unclear what exactly that report will hold. But analysts today say that artificial intelligence stock Monday.com plunged, but Oracle, Nvidia, and Microsoft all moved higher in the stock market today. We'll be right back. Thanks for staying with us here on Chicago Live this afternoon. We're glad to be joined by our next guest, the police chief of Gary, Indiana, Derek Cannon. Derek, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
So, Chief Cannon, you just recently released the 2025 Public Safety Report, and it shows a couple of key things that we want to note. 1, homicides in Gary are down, but 2, cases solved are up. Tell me a little bit more about what you found for this report.
Yeah, so great. Thank you for having us again. I really appreciate it. It's a testament to this station and the great things that's going on in Gary, Indiana. First, this is my second year as police chief. First year, I really got in, had a great team established, and then tried to make sure that we had the right people in the right places. And then in the second year, we focused in on making sure that the people that were bad actors were held accountable for the things that they were doing in Gary, Indiana. So with that being said, like you just spoke about, we've had substantial increases in charges and also convictions in our area.
And in this report, something else to note, but the homicide closure rate rose to 82% last year, up from 74% in 2024, and that is above the national average of 61%. When you say homicide closure rate, is that when a homicide case is closed?
Yeah, that's right. So it's a lot of different closures, but mostly we deal with charges and then also administrative closures where we know what happened, but at the same time, the prosecutor's office might engage some type of administrative closure. We have great working relationships with our federal prosecutor. We have great working relationships with our Lake County prosecutor. And then we've also joined in on a Metro Homicide Task Force led by the prosecutor Bernard Carter. So all of those things have been great gains. We've been working towards these goals. Again, in 2024, we had great success. 2025, we had great success, and we're looking for better things in 2026.
Now, Chief Cannon, you mentioned more charges, more convictions. Does that come from that collaboration with the state's attorney's office, with other departments, to bring these individuals who commit these serious and violent crimes and offenses to justice? Is it a team effort, a team collaboration?
Absolutely, it's a team effort. Right now, I am sitting inside of the Real-Time Crime Center that was just established under a previous administration. We're thankful for them. We had one of our key partners, Larry McKinley, was in just the godfather of our basically crime center. All of those things come back to this hub, right? And so when they come back to this hub, we're able to basically give those things back out in the finished product. This is what the juries are looking for. This is what our partners and prosecutors are looking for. And this also provides legitimacy to our community as they are able to see things as we are able to see things. So they participate. We have over 110 cameras that's coming right here that provides over 1,000 feeds so we can have overwatch over our city.
And you mentioned the community. What has the relationship been like between the Gary Police Department and the community? Is that something that you have seen improve since you took on this role?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a community member, and it's interesting because being born and raised here, there was a lot of people in the service industries that serviced me, and then now I'm able to service them in the same type of way as the chief of police. I give that same type of attitude to all of the officers that come here and service the community. It's a one common goal that we have is to push the city forward and to make sure that we have a safer city going ahead. We got a lot of things going on here in Gary, Indiana. There's a lot of economic development, and we want to make sure that we let everybody know, not only the citizens, not only police officers, but we're open for business.
And now a little bit about your background. I'm seeing that, you are part of this small group of police officers that actually graduated from the FBI Academy. Tell me what that has done to help you in this role and in your career at the Gary Police Department.
Yes, I'm very thankful for the Gary Police Department investing in me. In 2018, I did become a graduate of the 271st class of the FBI National Academy that was held in Quantico, Virginia. With that being done, the network is something that I can't replace. I can contact chiefs of police and other administrators all over the country and the world, because we also had international students, to be able to get wise advice, to be able to sharpen iron on iron, and to be able to use best practices to move our agency forward. So it's give a little bit, take a little bit, but those lessons that I learned, I'm using those lessons real time. Just another thing real quick, when I left for the National Academy, they give you a catalog. The catalog gives you a bunch of classes that you're able to use, and I picked specific classes that were specific to the Gary Police Department so we can bring that information, energy, and education back here.
Yeah, what were some of those classes?
So you got psychological leadership, you got contemporary issues in law enforcement, you got organizational leadership and behavior, and you have physical fitness as well. A lot of people don't understand this is a high-paced career, high-paced job, even for the chief of police. And so we have to have all type of things in mind. And I also took a class called spiritual wellness and being, because the mental capacity is very important as well.
How long were you there at Quantico?
3 months.
Wow.
3 months.
Okay.
There, yeah.
And you
Well,
still
I was
worked
stationed on the academy there.
And you still worked for the Gary Police Department when you did that?
Yes, so it was a training course that's provided by the U.S. government. So the Gary Police Department didn't have to pay for that training. They offer that to the, top line supervisors and people that are going to advance in their career. They have a commitment to make sure that you come back and you do so many years back in your own agency. And it's really to put everybody on the same platform and to make sure that even if my neighbor has something, that I'll be able to network with them and we can utilize those things to have a positive impact in our communities.
Absolutely. I'm sure it translates really well. Now, tell me a little bit, just in general, Gary, there seems to be a lot of redevelopment plans in the works for the city. Tell me, Chief Cannon, do you think that, creating a more vibrant downtown Gary could also be on your side when it comes to crime?
Absolutely. Gary, Indiana is a place that you just cannot overlook. The setting, the environment, the infrastructure, all of these great things. And I have to thank the mayor, the Honorable Eddie D. Melton, for his assembling of a team. He's really went out, did his due diligence to assemble team members to make sure that we move the city forward. I am just a clog in the wheel, I guess you want to say. And so public safety is definitely an important thing. We want our citizens to feel safe, but there's so much going on here that even I'm a fan of all of the action because I'm a citizen here too. And I can't leave out that the Bears might be coming this way. I'm rooting for the Bears.
I was just going to ask, do you think in your future you'll be providing some security for the team?
Well, you have to do your homework, and I've already done that. We set up an advisory committee. Have you seen the plans that the Gary city has put forth? We're serious about this situation. And right now we're building our infrastructure plans to see how we can do those things. I've been in contact with chiefs of police that have been a part of those same type of discussions when one team moved to a different city. So we're planning the development now.
Awesome. Now, any other cases that you're working on that you want to bring to the public's attention? Anything that, maybe is unsolved? I'm sure, like any community, there are crimes that have occurred where you're still looking for the people responsible. What's your message to the public?
Yes, our message to the public is anybody can get the win. We're looking for people to be involved with our community. The latest tip or any type of environment, you can email in, you can call in, you can come to a police officer, you see them on the street. We need the community to be involved with this whole diaspora of just crime. So if we can just get everybody on the same page to let them know that, hey, we're one to be responsible for the information that you're giving us, that would take the whole community in a great way. So when you say 82% closure rate, that means it's 18% that's not closed right now. And so we're concerned about those. Those places are not closed, and we're actively still investigating those matters.
And how about recruitment? Since you, have taken on the chief's job, any openings for people who are looking to get involved in law enforcement? And you mentioned it yourself, you're a community member there. Do you look for people who live in Gary to be on the police force?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We just had a hiring event this past weekend where we had over 40-something applicants came out. And out of that 40-something applicants, those are really, really serious applicants because 30 made it to the next phase.
Wow.
Right. So we're always accepting applications here. We usually have 2 hiring events a year. We use a local academy. There's a lot of things that can be done. And if I'm talking to somebody that's listening to this right now, you can be a part of their change.
Thank you so much. Anything else exciting you have going on that you want people at home to know about?
That we're just, the Gary Police Department is open for business. There's a lot of stigma that's been placed on the city, but I'm gonna tell you this, just come out one day for your own self, ride the South Shore train or fly into the Gary Airport or come in by boat. We have a lot of great things going on over the past years or two when the COVID was going on. A lot of people experienced the beaches here, right? So we have a lot of entertainment that's going to be coming up this summer. And so I would just say, pay attention to the Gary government page, and all those great things will be on display. And we'll be ready for here to make sure that you're safe while you're here.
Chief Cannon, one last question. How do you continue this trajectory, with the results that you saw in this report, so that when we talk next year, they go up even higher and the results improve even more?
So it's doubling down on the work that we already have. It's follow through. It's making sure that we gain more partners, get more buy-in. All of those different types of things really, really make a difference. And then as the people come in, the people that we talked about, the new hires, training them in the same way. And so everybody is moving in one direction. I use a lot of analogies when it comes to team sports and football and things like that. And we saw a lot of different things that happen as far as sports go. And so I use that same thing. I'll make sure I go to roll calls. I'll make sure I go to meetings, and then give the people that serve in this community some hope so they can go out and do a great job.
Gary Police Chief Derek Cannon, thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back here on Chicago Live. Welcome back to Chicago Live, and thank you for being with us on this afternoon. We appreciate you joining us. We covered many great topics today, including we just heard from Gary's Police Chief Derek Cannon, who spoke about the efforts and the success that they are seeing at the police department there and how they plan to continue that success, not only at the department, but in the community as well. We also heard from a former FBI specialist about the Nancy Guthrie case and where things stand there. We will have much more tomorrow from 1 to 4 p.m. You can also tune in coming up for the news at 4.
Here's what's going on in our area.